You know, I'm honored to be with you at this Defending the Constitution convention. What a wonderful time to be alive, as Ronald Reagan said. We're lucky not to live in pale and timid times. We've been blessed with the opportunity to stand for something. For liberty and freedom and fairness, these are things worth fighting for. You know, when Arizona was made a state in 1912, its Enabling Act has a provision that people have pointed to say that you just gave up your land, you didn't want it. It said the people of Arizona forever disclaim all right and title to the unappropriated public lands lying within its boundaries. I was on a legal panel recently with a law professor who's quoted as saying, well, that language right there means you just gave it up. It's a dead letter. And I had the opportunity to ask him because he said, you know, I've looked at the enabling acts of all the western states and they all say forever disclaim all right and title to the unappropriated public lands. And when it was my turn to speak, I got up and I said, well, look at this language right here. Forever disclaim all right and title to the unappropriated public lands. Well, that's Alabama and Louisiana and Nebraska and North and South Dakota. And the promise is the same. And the federal government disposed of their land. You know, Arizona, shortly after its statehood, got fed up with this and said, you've got to keep your promise. You've got to dispose of this land. And it rallied together with all of the other western states. And they pushed on President Hoover to hold a commission on transferring the public lands. And Congress held hearings entitled Granting Remaining Unreserved Public Lands to the States. Not if, simply how. Now, Congress, being Congress, came up with the brilliant plan. They said, we'll give you all the surface rights. We know we promised to transfer your land. We'll give you all the surface rights. We're just going to keep all the minerals. And Arizona, along with all the other states, said, yeah, afraid not. You need to give us all the benefit with the burden. You need to keep your whole promise, just like you did to all states east of Colorado. And one man from Arizona stood up, an original member of your legislature, Thomas Maddock. And his address that he gave to the Western governors in 1931 was added to the congressional record in 1932. He said this public land question is older than our nation, that the federal government is merely a trustee over these lands to dispose of them for the benefits of the states, not to hold on to them forever, which makes sense. Now the states rallied and they shut Congress down from disposing of just the surface and keeping all the minerals. 2 years later, in the Taylor Grazing Act, they passed an act to simply manage the lands, which is the precursor of the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM. And in the first line of the Taylor Grazing Act, it said, this act is just to promote the highest use of these lands pending its final disposal. For 200 years, Congress knew it was simply a trustee to dispose of the land to create new states, use the proceeds to pay the debt, and for no other use or purpose whatsoever. However, Congress in 1976 came up with a new policy to hold the lands in federal ownership forever, the Federal Land Policy Management Act. Now, fortunately, about 4 years ago, the United States Supreme Court weighed in on Congress' authority to unilaterally change the vested rights of a state's agreement at statehood, the Enabling Act. And the Supreme Court said this: the consequences of a state's admission are instantaneous, and it ignores the uniquely sovereign character of that event to even suggest that somehow subsequent acts of Congress can diminish what was already bestowed, particularly where all of a state's public lands are at stake. Think about that. The United States Supreme Court recently unanimously said Congress does not have the authority to unilaterally change those vested rights of our statehood, particularly where all of our public lands are at stake. So based on this unanimous Supreme Court case, Utah took action, and we passed the Transfer of Public Lands Act in 2012. Western states are banding together today. 5 states have already passed Transfer of Public Lands legislation to begin the process of compelling Congress to honor to our children and our communities the same promise to transfer the public lands that it already kept with all states east of Colorado, that it already kept with Hawaii. Now, you have great representatives in Arizona who are already working on this, but they need your help. They need your voice. They need your phone calls. They need your email. They need you to leverage your voice with your cities and your counties and your farm bureaus. On the website and here you'll see examples of resolutions that have been sent in by organizations, leveraging one voice into 10, leveraging one voice into tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands, that transferring our public lands, honoring the same promise to our communities and our states today is the only solution big enough to actually fund education. Better care for our lands and our forests, protect access, create jobs, and grow local, state, and national economies. Your own Thomas Maddock, an original member of the Arizona legislature, in his testimony that was attached to the 1932 congressional record on granting remaining unreserved public lands to the states, told us how this can be done. He said as few as 10 senators can shut down the Senate. In fact, can shut down Congress. They can shut down the appropriation process of Congress until they legitimately deal with the issue of honoring to our states the same promise they kept with all states east of Colorado. It's simply a matter of will. Well, where does will come from? It comes from you. It comes from you making your voice known to your representatives, making your voice known to representatives at every level. Think about the Constitution. What does it say? That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which they meant to be property. And that to secure these rights, governments, plural, are instituted among men. Your city council is to secure these rights to property. Your county commissions to secure these rights to property. Your state legislature, your governor, to secure these rights to life, liberty, and property, which allows us to bless other people's lives with the fruits of our labors and create wealth, without which we are simply a socialized nation, as John Kenneth Galbraith said. You leveraging your voice and making your voice known so that your state stands with these other states. And as we stand together, we now have states east of Colorado. South Carolina passed a resolution supporting the transfer of public lands to the western states because they know it's the only solution big enough, not only for our states and our local communities, but for the nation as we go forward. But it takes you, and it's going to take effort. Now, there's more information on the website, AmericanLandsCouncil.org. There are videos you can share, and as we continue to move forward this message and teach, we need to band together in our states and get our representatives that have the resolve that we give them coming from the bottom up, because that's where political courage comes from. We need to move this message forward, and the time is now. We have a window of opportunity to make this happen, and it depends on us. What will you do? Some people have said this is nothing more than another sagebrush rebellion. They couldn't be more wrong. This is legally based, constitutionally based, historically sound. In fact, the Federalist Society, an organization of 40,000 constitutionally focused lawyers, scholars, and professors, have done a full legal analysis that's available on the American Lands Council website. I encourage you to make this legal analysis available to your representatives at every level of government, to the attorneys in these organizations of government, to the government affairs personnel, to your congressional representatives, and ask them this simple question: why the difference? Why the difference when the promises are the same? Why the difference that we're not allowed to use our own resources to educate our own children, to care for our own forests rather than waiting for them to burn down? Why the difference? If ever there was a time when there was a simple job interview question for next year's campaigns, it is simply this: why? And expect the answer. And if they don't have an answer for you, we need to find those that can, because this is the most critical question on the only solution big enough to care for our communities and to care for our nation. So go to the AmericanLandsCouncil.org website. Study the information that's there. Doesn't it make a difference to know that the promises are the same? It's already been done before, and this is the only solution big enough. There is an answer. We don't simply just have to beat the drum and stamp our feet. There's an answer, but it's going to take will, and it's going to take us standing together. So put your information into the website, and we'll send you more information as we go. Take that legal analysis and share it with all that you know, and ask them that simple question, why, and invite them to stand with us as we band together, just like Illinois did, with Missouri and Arkansas and Alabama and Mississippi and Florida. If they can do it, we can do it. If Hawaii can do it, we can do it. And folks, what if we don't? We have no one to blame but ourselves. This is a wonderful time to be alive. We're lucky not to live in pale and timid times. We've been blessed with the opportunity to stand for something. For liberty and freedom and fairness. These are things worth fighting for, worth devoting our lives to. So let us go forth with good cheer and stout hearts, happy warriors, out to seize back a country and a world of freedom. Thank you very much.